I am so excited to have Crystal join us as our speaker today. She is a powerhouse of a woman in the startup ecosystem. She used to be the chief of staff at Gojek, helping to grow the company from zero to not just one, but to 100 and beyond. She's also an angel investor. She's also a startup advisor. She also is a co-founder of Girl Generation, which is this Indonesia-based startup giving girls access to STEM. So she has done a lot of fantastic work, and I cannot wait to hear about her journey today. So, without further ado, please put your hands together for Crystal.
Thank you so much, and thank you in advance to our scriber because I don't actually know a lot of how this will fit together linearly, but the format. I'm Crystal, and when I was asked to speak at Manila Club, this is a question that I had to ask myself for the last 4 weeks, and I prepared. What did I just sign myself up for? Because what do I have to say to a room of likely very qualified, smart, intelligent, hardworking people who clearly have some mission, some idea about what they need to learn in the next year or two because they're choosing to come to an event at 8:30 in the morning, which is usually the time I wake up. For those of you who don't know me, I live many parallel lives. I'm a I'm a SQL professor. I teach at Reforge, the MBA for product managers. But I'm also a startup advisor, investor in a couple of startups in Singapore, Indonesia, and the US. And I've also been a board member at Naked Wines, a public company in the UK and the US that does wine delivery. And I'm also my other generation girl. But I've come a long way because I've been many other things as well. I've been a data intern at the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching when I went to UC Berkeley. I've been a e-commerce dropshipper before dropshipping was a thing. An investment banker, but a failure of one because I'm not very good at that job. I was also at Gojek for the last 5 years, where I started out as the first data hire. Started working on the growth team, ran fraud, risk, internal portals, performance marketing, many other things up until the staff, where I helped our merger and acquisition of two other companies. And whenever I think about this path, I think, wow, none of these really made a lot of sense along the way. But because I'm not that great at math, even though I work in data, I realized that a lot of the math that said parallel lines don't intersect isn't really qualified for life because life is not a perfect equation itself. My life has kind of gone up and down. In the last few years, I started running my own advisory business where I advise startups and other founders trying to figure out their own life path. And I realized that a lot of the experiences that I've had growing up in the earlier years are actually what helped make me quite successful in my later years. The reason I was great at Gojek is because I was willing to start at the bottom. The reason I was able to be where I am today is because I still accepted and was willing to start at the bottom as well. In 2011, I'm in UC Berkeley. I'm actually quite poor growing up, and so I had to pay my way through college. So my first full-time job was while I was in college, also with a part-time job, while also attending class. I found a job on Craigslist for a company, a startup called Democracy. It was early days. It's in the era of startups, and I took for granted growing up in San Francisco that startups were plentiful in this city. It's not an opportunity that I would have had access to if I lived in Jakarta, let's say. But I became the full-time data entry person who was pressing a bunch of buttons behind the screen so that this product would look like a real thing to their investors and to their customers. And so when someone would place an order on this Pinterest-like product, I would go and make the purchase myself for this user, type in their address. I mean, talk about starting at the bottom. But I was willing to do this, and I was actually pretty good at it. I was typing of a words per minute typing speed of like 130. I've only met one person faster than me. And so I was pretty good at this job. And honestly, someone noticed. So in the second month, I was promoted. You are no longer data ops, you are now operations. I got the chance to work with engineering for the very first time. And I helped them try and figure out what's a data scrape, what things weren't working when they try to automate certain workflows, like a forward range read, the strike before strike existed. And it was amazing. I was promoted, and I realized that starting from the bottom is okay if you can work your way up. And so in 2020, more than 10 years later, I've done a lot of good. I should be fairly successful. And instead, I started to work for free. Talk about starting at the real bottom. At least in 2011, I was paid. But in 2020, when I applied to Reporch to be an entrepreneur in residence, based on my experience at Gojek, building many teams, going from 0 to 1, they said, no, I was rejected. And that made me think maybe Southeast Asia just isn't an important enough market. Maybe my experience isn't good enough. Maybe it's not interesting enough. And so instead they said, we're not going to hire you, but would you work for free? Would you like to be a guest at a case study in one of our other programs where someone else had me do that? And I said, yes. What did I just sign myself up for? I asked myself as I worked tirelessly on a case study for many hours for no money, trying to design something that was reflective of my work and my capabilities and my experience. One, so I could prove that Southeast Asia does have badass companies. And two, so that I could show that they were wrong. And they were. They ended up hiring me 1 year later. I became the one teaching that class. And I ended up building my own program at the Forge as well. But again, sometimes the bottom is not just working for free. Sometimes you also have to learn a lot of other lessons as well. In 2015, a little bit after Lobocracy, after I graduated, my first final full-time job was as an investment banking analyst in San Francisco at a boutique bank. And we were using an Excel spreadsheet that was synced on Dropbox, that would crash every time you opened it. It took 5 minutes to open and resolve itself, and it was a nightmare. We were using this as an address book. And so I decided I should work for free and try to improve this. I went on Reddit, that is actually me, and I asked, I made a post that said, how do I fix this problem? I don't understand what a better way of resolving this address book situation would be. It was a list of contacts of all the banks, VCs, startups that this investment bank reached out to. And so there must be a better way. But what I was able to figure out was I don't know anything at all. My willingness to start at the bottom, to ask for help from someone else's parallel life, is what led me to make this post and learn from an actual stranger what I should do. They taught me what a RDBMS is, the thing that I use every day now and have built my career around, and taught me what SQL was in a very long post. They spent a lot of time and effort to teach me this, to tell me this information, when I had no idea. They had no reason to help me at all. And so I went to my boss and I said, did you know we could use a SQL database? It's open source. Here's all the tables I would build. Here's how it'll be designed. And he looked at me and he said, open source. Isn't that super expensive? So that's when I realized I need to work at a tech company. I was a very young 23-year-old, very immature. And so I went on Glassdoor. I said, this company has no sense of tech, has no interest in investing in its people or its operations. And then I was fired the next week. So what did I not have there? I did not have a sponsor. A sponsor is very different. What I had in Reddit was, thank you, Kingdom Come 50. I had a mentor. A mentor is someone who gives you advice, tells you what you can do, shows you the ropes. Unfortunately, this bank did not offer that opportunity for me, and so I had to gain access from a sponsor. I'm still grateful for that experience, and I don't think you need a sponsor every single time. I think the fact that you don't have a sponsor is telling in itself, and it's what led me and pushed me to go and take my investment banking experience, apply it to my own life, research the top companies in Southeast Asia, look at their numbers, their profiles, their business, market potential, and then send out cold emails to ask, are you hiring? Because if you are, I'm going to move halfway across the world next week and join your company that I've never seen before, in a country that my parents grew up in, but I have actually never been to. Luckily, I did find a sponsor here. I was able to find someone who, when I called on the way to the airport and I said, hey, I don't know what you think I'm able to do, and I'm not actually sure what you want out of a data person, but I'm also not 100% sure that I know what I'm doing. And this person, the CEO of Gojek, said, it's okay, we're all doing this for the first time. And that made me feel like I can do really hard things in a place that looks perfect. And so what I had there was someone who pushed me to do data, but also someone who told me that I should do growth. Because when I was given the title SVP of Business Intelligence and Growth, you'll notice that there is that band there. I started out as the VP of Business Intelligence. And one morning I was called and said, hey, I need you to take on this role, and we're going to send out an email tomorrow. And I said, but I'm not ready. And they said, you're going to do it anyway, you'll be fine. That was someone who was an advocate and an opportunity giver. And that's the difference between mentoring and sponsorship. When we sponsor, we're putting social capital, financial capital, personal capital on the line so that someone else has the opportunity to grow. Talk about company capital. Like if I messed up at a Series C company of that scale, that would be a nightmare. I learned about sponsorship very early on. In 2005, I decided I would sell clothes on a Korean fashion forum before Korean stuff was cool on Suki. And my mom was my sponsor. This was a K-pop forum of 12 to 15-year-old girls fangirling over the latest K-pop music, fashion, art, and I decided I would ship clothing from Gmarket, a company that only allowed a minimum order quantity of $600. So I asked my mom, I'm going to sell clothes on the internet to random internet strangers. Will you give me $600? And she did. And for a single mother, that's a lot of financial capital for this. This was a time of no PayPal, and so what I was doing was typing in my address, my family's home address, to people on the internet, hoping they would mail me literal cash in an envelope. To talk about personal risk as well. Our parents may be the people who provide us with the most sponsorship and capital that we could ever ask for. But what did I learn about this, and how did it help me today? Well, as an e-commerce shipper, I got to realize how hard it is to work with other people. Customers who complain about sizing, expecting you to know every detail about your product, but actually you're a dropshipper. The shipping times being incorrect or being delayed, having to answer customer responses. This experience actually helps me today when I'm advising Brass, a e-commerce aggregator startup, because I actually know what it feels like to be an e-commerce merchant struggling with their customers, their orders, their experiences. That sponsorship made me a better entrepreneur today. And so I think where I will end here is that we should think about or rethink investing in yourself and instead think about investing in others. Because if I think about the parallel lives that existed when I was going through Levocracy, the investment bank, Gojek, my soon-be shopping and e-commerce shopping experience, is actually when other people invested in me and sponsored me, those parallel lives are actually what were most meaningful to my growth. And most importantly, I think kids need this sponsorship the most. When I went to college, I didn't know about careers like what a consultant was. First time I heard about McKinsey is when I joined Gojek, and someone made a comment that there's a bunch of it if you insult this kid. And I said, what is that? And so you never know what you don't know. When I joined the investment bank, I didn't know that SQL and relational databases existed. Something that would be the pinnacle of my career 10 years later. I didn't know how e-commerce might help me in the future, but it does today. And so one of the examples of the ways I'm pushing this forward is through, she's not even a family member, she's my mom's friend's daughter, who I met when she was 11 years old, and she definitely didn't know what to do at that time. But she today is studying political science and economics. Oddly enough, I studied political science at Berkeley. But she is someone who I kept pulling out of her comfort zone. I asked her to come visit Gojek with me, to come shadow me, to see what other jobs were, because it seems like most kids don't wake up and grow up thinking, I want to be a senior product manager one day. It just isn't part of your meta yet. But we're getting there. And as she was thinking about where to go to college, what to major in, what jobs to do, she asked if I would be one of the guarantees for her financial growth. And I said, yes, I would love that opportunity to sponsor you. In Generation Girl, the nonprofit in Indonesia that we have started, it's an opportunity for young girls to try STEM. And if they win with me, if they try it and they say, you know what, I hate it. I love that we give them that opportunity to make that call for themselves. Because it means that they got an opportunity to try something. Most girls who grow up in Indonesia never get access to a computer, aren't told that they can be an engineer or a designer. But I'm most grateful when we hear students who say, it helped me figure out what I wanted. And so my call to you today is to consider, what is the bottom of that career or that experience that you would like to collect in the next year? And are you willing to start at the bottom? And for everyone else who is at the bottom today, what can you provide to them? Can you help sponsor someone who is at the bottom, but they just don't know it yet? Can you provide them with the advice, support, and sponsorship that you wish you had when you were younger? That's, I think, the point of parallel. Thank you.